If everybody please take your seats, please. We do have a quorum right now. Okay, I call this Board of Directors Public Workshop of the FORA Reuse Authority to order. Roll call, please.
City of Carmel by the Sea, Mayor Burnett.
Here.
City of Delray Oaks, Mayor Edelin.
Here.
City of Marina, Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell. City of Marina, Councilmember Brown. City of Monterey, Councilmember Selfridge. Monterey County, Chair Potter. Monterey County Supervisor Calcagno. Monterey County Supervisor Parker.
Here.
City of Pacific Grove, Councilmember Camp. City of Salinas, Mayor Donahue. City of Sand City, Mayor Pendergrass.
Here.
City of Seaside, Mayor Bachhoffner.
Here.
City of Seaside, Councilmember Oglesby.
Here.
17 Congressional District, Alec Arago. 15 State Senate District, Senator Blakesley. 27 State Assembly District, Nicole Charles. University of California, Graham Bice. California State University, Justin Wellner. Monterey Peninsula College, Vicky Nakamura. Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, Dr. Shepard. Monterey Salinas Transit, Hunter Harvath. Transportation Agency of Monterey County, Todd Muck. United States Army, Colonel Clark. Fort Ord BRAC Office, Gail Youngblood. Marina Coast Water District, Howard Gustafson. Vice Chair Edelin, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I would ask Director Jason Burnett if you would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. I will be chairing the meeting this evening. Mr. Dave Potter is back east with his mother, who's seriously ill right now. She's very serious. I'm sure I speak on behalf of the board and everybody present. We send him our best wishes and prayers for her hopefully very speedy recovery. So this evening we've got a public workshop. We're dividing it basically into two major phases. The first will be a public workshop, in which case it'd be Mr. Michael Groves of EMC Planning will be running that. He'll be running the actual agenda of that portion of the workshop itself. After that's over with, we'll follow that up with a public comment period on any items not on the agenda that you want to say here before the board of directors. So there'll be a time during the actual public workshop to comment on the reassessment itself. So that's that one portion, and then when that's closed, we'll open up to public comments on anything that you want to comment at that time. So without further ado, what I'll do is turn this over to Mr. Michael Groves, EMC Planning, to run the public workshop portion of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. My name is Michael Groves. I'm the president of EMC Planning Group in Monterey, here representing the FORA board and the staff with regard to the reassessment process for the base reuse plan. I welcome everybody tonight. Thank you for your attendance and appreciate you being here. The purpose of the FORA board having this special meeting tonight is to focus on the reassessment report. And the idea is for the board to consider your public comments, to consider the reassessment report, and to give any input that you might have with regard to the report, particularly with regard to the menu items that we've listed in the report on subject areas and topics. Did we get everything on the menu is the key question for tonight. We're looking for, have we put on the menu the things that you wanted to see on the menu? And maybe there's some things on the menu you don't want to see. And so those are all subject to comment tonight as a part of this menu that you're going to be looking at and talking about. Opportunities for deliberation on the actual content of that menu will actually happen in 2013. So that is the agenda for tonight. Most of you have seen this slide before, but for those who haven't, I'm just going to do a quick one on it. And board members, I know you have your backs to the screen. I have put presentations in front of you so you can follow it on hard copy. If you remember, we started the process in April and went through April through June. We did background research. We did an assessment of the reuse plan. We looked at basically doing public outreach. We did 5 public workshops during that period of time We did a market study during that period of time. And because of concerns from the public, they wanted more public outreach. We added another public input workshop on August 29th after we released the scoping report. That was released on August 15th. We then had the workshop on August 29th. Again, tonight's a special board meeting is again from the public saying we would like to have more input to the process. So we've held another special workshop tonight that wasn't a part of our original scope, and it's based on the reassessment report that was released on October 17th. You can see the highlighted down at the bottom. We have a board meeting coming up on November 16th, and we are requesting comments in writing by November 7th at 5 o'clock in the FORA offices. The key visual to the reassessment report, if you remember I showed this to you at the last board meeting, breaks it down into 5 major categories for the reassessment report. The first category is the base reuse plan modifications and corrections. The second is prior board actions and regional plan consistency. What I told the board at the last meeting is these 2 categories are pretty much no-brainer categories. They're things that have already occurred. They're corrections to the base reuse plan, very straightforward type of things like typos and things that need to be changed because of name changes or whatever has occurred in the last 15 years. The second category, prior board actions, are actions the board has already taken and have not been included in the base reuse plan. Regional plan consistency is a requirement of the base reuse plan, and things have happened in the last 15 years with the air quality plan and transportation plan in Monterey County that require some changes to the base reuse plan. So again, those are things that are pretty straightforward items for the board to consider in 2013. Category 3 is implementation of policies and programs. Those are existing policies and programs. And so some of those policies and programs have been implemented, some are ongoing, and some have not been implemented. And I want to make that distinction between the responsibility of FORA and the responsibility of the jurisdictions. A lot of those policies and programs are the responsibility of the jurisdictions to implement. That doesn't mean FORA can't have some oversight to those policies and programs, and we've talked about that in our reassessment document. Category 4, policies and program modifications. Again, this is either existing policies and programs in the base reuse plan that could be modified or new policies and programs that are created. Category 5 is the FORA procedures and operations. Reassessment report subject areas, category 4 and 5 is the main focus of the menu items. And you can see from the screen there, those are the basic subject areas by which we have laid out topic areas and options for the board in the reassessment document. Note on the bottom of the page, essentially all the subject areas, topics, and potential options for the board are not exhaustive. I really want to emphasize that. When we get to those areas and the board says we want to take up this particular topic area, we would expect staff would flesh it out some more, provide more information to the board, and provide maybe potentially 2 or 3 other options for the board to consider as a part of that topic area. So again, they're not exhaustive, but they should lead the board in the right direction towards what items they may want to consider or are near and dear to their heart for consideration in 2013 and beyond. This slide is not intended to be read by you. You can see it's a lot of material on one page. I put it up there just so I could talk about it for a second, so you don't have to even look at it. But essentially, the blue is the subject areas, and everything underneath is the topic areas. So those are the menu that I'm talking about tonight is this slide. What I've done for you is put it on a handout. So every board member has a handout in front of them. On the back table, there's this handout. So if you don't have one of these and you want one, this is what we're asking you to focus on tonight. It's on the table on your way in. So please use that just to save your eyes. Let's talk about the schedule. The reassessment report schedule. Essentially, we're at October 30th, if everybody knows that. We're at the workshop. We're expecting public comments to be received for inclusion in the November FORA board packet by November 7th. So the public review period is between October 17th, when the reassessment document was released, and November 7th to receive comments by 5 o'clock. Now, I want to make that really clear because this question was asked by board members the last time. We will accept comments after November 7th. So the last comment there on the slide says, comments received will be distributed to board members along with an errata sheet, but they won't be in the board packet, but they will be distributed to board members. So if you wanted your comments to be in the board packet, get us to us by November 7th to be on the November 16th board meeting. Otherwise, we'll accept all comments after that time and up to the 16th, but they'll have to be hand distributed to board members as we go along. Between November 7th and the 16th, we'll create an errata sheet. What that will mean is the board will have the option to say, we want this added to the reassessment document. So we'll have a continuous list on that errata sheet of things to be added or deleted to their pleasure. And then once the board receives the report, we'll implement it with whatever direction the board gives us on that errata. November 16th board meeting, our expectation is the board will consider the reassessment report, the errata that has been prepared on that reassessment report, and then receive the report once they're satisfied with the contents that we have at that point. Again, just to remember, the reassessment report is a menu of subject areas and topics for the board to consider in 2013 and beyond. Tonight, we are asking the board and the public to consider and discuss the menu. That menu is that handout that I showed you here. So take a look at that menu. Now, you may have some comments about Category 1, 2, or 3. If you do have comments about Category 1, 2, or 3, those are welcome tonight as well. But the focus really is Category 4 and 5 to make sure we've got everything included that you'd like to see. Did we get everything you wanted on the menu? At the board meeting, once the board is satisfied with the menu, we'll ask them to receive the report. We talked about last time what happens in 2013. Our expectation as staff will probably ask the board to prioritize the categories, subjects, and topic areas as a first action in 13. Maybe look at categories 1, 2, and 3 and how they might move those forward. And then the staff could also ask the board to consider and give direction on the menu items, the ones that you're going to be focusing on tonight. I'm available for any questions as we go along tonight, and feel free to ask those and be clear about the direction we're going. And again, I just have one little statement at the bottom. Please focus your input on the reassessment report tonight, particularly the category, subject areas, and topics in the menu. Is there anything to add or delete from the menu? With that said, the Sierra Club would like to make a presentation. Mr. Tom Moore is going to make that presentation on behalf of the Sierra Club, and then we'll come back for a couple of closing comments. Thank you.
Is there any way we can get the spotlights turned down? Because they're kind of shining on the screen. I'm hoping we could see things a little bit better if that could be accomplished. So first, let me just say that the Sierra Club really appreciates the degree of public participation and public engagement in this process. It's a complex process. It's a lengthy process. It's not over. We also very much appreciate the engagement of the FORA board and the FORA staff in this process also. It is, as I indicate, a pretty complicated issue. We have provided on the back table out in the hallway a letter that we just sent today to the FORA board, which contains a number of comments that I'm not going to talk about tonight, just in the interests of your time and getting to your opportunity to have something to say. So, the Sierra Club happens to believe that by 2020, the former Fort Ord can become the most attractive place in the United States to live, to work, and to visit. However, this will occur only if FORA begins to proactively search for businesses which offer permanent, high-paying, creative-type jobs. This response to the draft reassessment report describes Sierra Club's recipe for combining the ingredients of Fort Ord's natural environment, educational institutions, and economic development, blended according to the reassessment reports and simmered in the sauce of public comments, hopefully to create a world-class cuisine by 2020. The recipe for Fort Ord to become perfect by 2020 requires the cooking utensils of the scoping report, the market report, and the reassessment report. The chefs are the FORA board of directors. The scoping report's the first cooking utensil. It identifies 156 unimplemented policies and programs from the 1997 base reuse plan. The second utensil is the market and economic analysis, and it offers the recommendations of highly qualified financial and economic experts. Finally, the draft reassessment report is the third cooking utensil and the subject of this presentation. It identifies 41 sets of options which the FORA board can potentially choose from in 2013. So the FORA board are the chefs. Only time will tell whether the chefs are short-order cooks who dish out standard fare made with processed food, or whether they are world-class chefs who skillfully sort and mix all natural ingredients that will blend into a masterful result by 2020. The chefs do have 3 world-class ingredients to work with. The first is Fort Ord's natural environment, consisting of thousands of acres of protected open space, having coastal live oaks, rare species, and sweeping vistas. The second ingredient are the educational institutions, with Cal State Monterey Bay as the dominant seasoning, and MPC, Monterey College of Law, Chartwell School, and UCM Best adding their own unique flavors. The third, and perhaps the most key ingredient, is the potential to attract to Fort Ord Silicon Valley-type businesses that provide high-paying, non-polluting, creative-type permanent employment. Businesses perhaps similar to the Lucas Studios, currently located at the reused Presidio Army Base in San Francisco, shown in this slide. So no chefs have ever had finer ingredients or more practical cooking utensils. However, short-order chefs, short-order cooks, frequently overcook and underseason and produce only ordinary results. By contrast, master chefs carefully assemble and cook wholesome ingredients based on a long-range view of the desired final product. Now to some specific comments about the reassessment report. With respect to Category 3, the Sierra Club does disagree with the report's assertion that the FORA board has options about how it will require the jurisdictions to implement base reuse plan policies and programs. The scoping report, as I indicated, identifies 156 base reuse plan policies, programs, and mitigation measures that haven't been implemented or for which implementation is incomplete. This includes programs such as the Oak Tree Protection Program, a trail plans policy, and urban design guidelines, and 153 other policies, programs, or mitigation measures which have been in the base reuse plan since 1998, but which have still not been fully implemented. The reassessment report describes 3 Category 3 options for FORA board consideration. The first option is to simply retain the status quo, which has unfortunately resulted in 156 unimplemented policies and programs. The second option is to actively facilitate implementation of these remaining unimplemented policies and programs by working with member jurisdictions to develop schedules for completing such implementation. The third option is not to accept requests for consistency determination until the jurisdiction has in fact implemented all the applicable policies and programs. So the Sierra Club disagrees with the reassessment report that the FORA board has either the first or second of these options. In other words, the chef's predecessors, the 1998 FORA Board of Directors, entered into a legally binding contract which prevents the current chefs from finding any development or legislative proposal consistent with the base reuse plan unless all applicable policies have been implemented. Certainly the board may try to do that second option of encouraging the underlying jurisdictions to complete implementation of these policies and programs, but if that doesn't work, FORA's real tool is option 3. Thus, the third option on the previous slide, withholding a consistency determination, really isn't an option at all. It's a legally enforceable contractual requirement. Accordingly, the Sierra Club recommends that the draft reassessment report be amended to recognize that the FORA board has no option of deciding whether or not to implement the policies and programs. Rather, it is required by the settlement agreement with the Sierra Club to withhold a consistency determination until all applicable policies, programs, and mitigation measures have been implemented by the requesting land use jurisdiction. Let's now turn to Category 4, which describes potentially substantive policy and program revisions to the base reuse plan. This is where FORA can demonstrate it is in fact comprised of master chefs rather than mere short-order cooks preparing only ordinary cuisine. Let's take a quick look at another closed Army base, the Presidio in San Francisco, and examine the Letterman Digital Arts Center, which is located there. The Letterman Digital Arts Center is the flagship of Lucasfilm operations. A help wanted ad on the internet on October 19th of this year advertised for 91 positions at Lucas Studios. The salaries for these 91 positions ranged from a low of $30,000 a year to in excess of $110,000 a year. It's jobs like these which the FORA chefs, the 2012 and 2013 FORA Board of Directors, should be aiming to attract to Fort Ord. The policy that Sierra Club recommends be added to the base reuse plan would define businesses similar to those at Lucas Studio as creative-type businesses and set as policy FORA's high priority of attracting such businesses to the former Fort Ord. The market and economic analysis is perhaps FORA Board's most valuable cooking utensil. It recommends on page 12 that FORA emphasize attracting creative-type businesses. It describes what these employers are looking for and notes that much of what the employers want is already required by the base reuse plan if we could just get it implemented. FORA paid over $500,000 for the entire reassessment report. We would certainly urge the FORA board to pay attention to that advice since they've paid a substantial sum for it. One of the problems, of course, is that employers similar to Lucas Studios are unlikely to locate at Fort Ord if the FORA board simply sits back and hopes that they will arrive. Sierra Club requests that the board adopt a policy of attracting creative-type businesses and then implement that policy by proactively marketing Fort Ord's three major ingredients: environment, education, and economic development. Appendix D3 to the scoping report shows that the public has a great appetite for high-paying permanent jobs at former Fort Ord. A second request with respect to Category 4 is for a policy addition of a policy that will require developers to either finish their projects within a specified time period or lose their entitlements. For example, the development and disposition agreement for the Dunes project has allowed dilapidated barracks to remain while much of the project has stalled. And at the East Garrison project, the development and disposition agreements allowed land to be cleared 6 years before even a small amount of construction began, leaving a scarred landscape. These simply aren't particularly attractive landscapes if you're trying to bring in creative-type jobs. So Sierra Club's second Category 4 request is that a policy be added to the base reuse plan that will prevent future delays similar to those that we've seen with the already entitled projects. In other words, eliminate the slow cooking process that led to such delays. So here is the Sierra Club's vision for Fort Ord in 2020. The Coast Live Oak woodlands will still exist and be protected. CSU Monterey Bay and the other educational institutions will be surrounded by uses that are compatible with and encourage the development of a college atmosphere. And want ads will appear daily offering high-paying permanent jobs at the creative-type businesses that have located at Fort Ord because it has a college town atmosphere, a world-class protected natural environment next door, and a set of chefs who have shown that they can make better cuisine than the best French chefs. So here are the three main recommendations in sum. First, recognize there's only one option under Category 3, and that is to ensure the implementation of all base reuse policies and programs, and that is a legal and contractual responsibility of the Fort Ord Reuse Authority. Second, adopt a Category 4 policy to attract creative-type jobs to Fort Ord. And third, adopt a Category 4 policy that terminates development agreements that are not implemented in a timely manner. Last but not least, members of the FORA board must be master chefs, constantly tasting and adjusting the flavor in order to arrive at the perfect result, rather than short order cooks who scramble together whatever leftover ingredients are available at the time. The $500,000 reassessment report is a bargain if its recipe guides the chefs to make Fort Ord the best place in the United States to live, to work, and to visit in 2020. And now, of course, I must apologize to all those short order cooks out there who actually are good cooks. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And with that, a couple of final comments from Candace Ingram, and then we'll open it up, turn it back over to the board chairman, and open up back to the public for comment.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Candy Ingram, and I'm going to be facilitating tonight's meetings. Bienvenidos y buenas noches a todos. Hay personas aquí esta noche que necesitan o prefieren escuchar solamente en español. Gracias. Okay, we will be conducting tonight's meeting in English. And I want to remind you again, if you would, to take materials that are on the table outside, and also to look at the comment cards. And I'd like to go back, if you would, for just a minute to the slides. I think it started at slide 7. Okay. So again, just to repeat what Michael said, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to make sure that in the reassessment report, we have covered all of the interests that you have and want to have the FORA board receive. Okay? Are the topics that you are most interested in the reassessment report? And if you're not sure, you still have time. You can still read the report and you can still make comments. If you want your comments included in the final report that's going to be presented to the board next month, then you need to get your comments in by the 7th of November, but you can continue to comment up and through the time that the board is hearing the items on the reassessment report. We have a form out on the table that's called a comment form. You're more than welcome, and I would encourage you to please fill out the form. The front of it is optional. You can give your name or not. It would be helpful if you do. On the back, you can write your comments. You can also email your comments in to plan@fora.org. And you can also mail in your comments. So there's still time and there's still opportunity to submit comments. As we move into the public portion of this meeting for your comments, I would ask that you please keep your comments to 3 minutes, that you are respectful of others, that you please refrain from any personal comments about anyone else or any comments that they may make. And I apologize in advance if I interrupt you at some point because you're talking longer than your 3 minutes. I will ask you to summarize your comments, please. And again, this is not the only opportunity for you to make a comment this evening. So let's begin the comments, and whoever wants to come up first to the podium in the middle, that would be great. It would be helpful if you would state your name and then make your comment. Thank you.
Good evening, FORA board members. My name is Bill Carruthers. I come to you from the city of Salinas, and as a person who has enjoyed immensely the recreational opportunities on FORA property and so forth. I have followed this development for some time, and I feel that there we go. Thank you very much. I feel that the 3 most important issues before the board tonight are water, water, and water. there seems to have been a huge number of growth projections made without considering the limitations to the water supply of this area. And there were many people who believed that Sarah Palin would build these ships with stainless steel tanks in them, and it would ship Arctic water to our relief and so forth. And that seems not to have occurred. The belief that somehow some things will just go away, technology will save us, and so forth, seem to have been a bit far-fetched and still are. Basically, locally, history is divided into prior to the cease and desist order for the peninsula and after. And the consequences to the real estate value of the properties on the peninsula and those communities, therefore, of a cease and desist order that limits water consumption to 35 gallons per person are such that the economic value would be severely impaired and would make any developments, any VOBs, anything going on FORA a joke by comparison. I suggest that we look at the history of what has happened during the past decade to middle-class jobs. They're vanishing, and there's very few prospects that they will be ever returning in our time. We have an administration and beliefs that somehow these will magically appear, and I'm terribly afraid that no efforts on our part will be
30
sufficient.
seconds.
Done. I conclude my comments. I'll be delighted to discuss markets, economics, and so forth. I know whereof I speak.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Levon Stone. I'm the Executive Director of the Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network. What I don't see in this assessment report, the summary here, is comments about the local community. I don't see any comments referring to the number of jobs that were lost, the number of families that were disenfranchised and separated from their communities. I don't see the promises or the responsibilities from the original reuse plan or for the Superfund process that was supposed to bring these people jobs so that they can support themselves and their families economically, have housing, because this is a federal process. I am still surprised to hear that after all this and going through this process of reassessment, the word community should be at the top of this report. Economic development, jobs under that, housing, transportation. The veteran cemetery should be here already. And I see the same type of language that is not talking about how we're going to deal with the people who were greatly impacted in this process. That needs to be addressed. And I've said that over and over again, and it's still not being addressed. Beauty and all that is great, but it sounds like a push to push people out of their places, out of their communities, and bring other people in. We're talking about high-powered jobs. High-powered jobs that would, of course, bring in other people out of the community that's not training the people in the community like this little program right here that we've been pushing forever with the Fort Ord Job Training Initiative. Those things need to be addressed in this assessment. It's very important. They need to be addressed first. And I don't care who else is coming in here. They are not in the position to push their programs and not pull in the program for the people who was greatly impacted here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Aileen Sanchez, and I've been asked by former City of Salinas Mayor Ana Caballero to read the following statement. Dear FORA board members, I send you this statement to urge you to follow the four-door reuse plan that was successfully negotiated and crafted when the four-door was closed. Negotiations over FORA and the four-doors reuse plan occurred while I served as a Salinas City Council member and FORA board member. These were very complicated, serious negotiations that involved a tremendous diverse cross-section of participants from across the entire Central Coast region, including Salinas. It took much skill, much dedication, and tremendous leadership from people like Liam Panetta and Sam Farr to conduct the negotiations and to fashion the compromises that created the four-door reuse plan. Thanks to that leadership of that environmental community and to the goodwill of everyone else, negotiators adopted a reuse plan that aggressively protects the environment. Fully 70% of the four-door lands are strictly off-limits to any kind of development and must remain as open space. This pro-environment compromises was reached at a time when communities across the region were panicking at the prospect of a severe economic recession due to the closure of Fort Ord. The compromise included two other critical elements as well. First, that a significant portion of the lands will be used to establish and strengthen the educational institution from throughout the Central Coast region. Second, that 30% of the land will be used to help create jobs and housing for impacted communities. So far, the one area of failure in the reuse plan is job creation. Unfortunately, some people are using the failure to argue that even more of the four-door lands, more than that 70% already designated, should be kept as open space for recreational users. This is an approach that contradicts the careful, crafted compromise that was reached in the four-door reuse plan. The reuse plan was clear that FORA is meant to serve all people and all communities within the Central Coast region, and not just
30 seconds.
a group of people with a single agenda. This means that FORA must serve people who need jobs as well as people who seek recreational opportunities. FORA cannot sacrifice one for the other. We still need jobs, perhaps even more so than when FORA adopted the reuse plan. Whatever changes has occurred since then, three things remain constant. The rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer, and working families still need jobs.
Time.
Please continue to support the careful crafted compromise to use a relatively small portion of FORA to create jobs for working families.
Time.
Thank you.
And this
Can
is
you
statement.
can you submit the comments in writing, provide copies for
Sure.
us?
I just want to add that three other individuals have expressed support of this statement. Nancy Valdez of the LULAC in
Time.
Salinas, and John Huerta, Mayor of City of Greenfield
Thank
and
you.
Friend Ledesma.
I'm going to ask you to please submit it. Thank you very much.
Good evening, FORA board members. My name is Amy White, the Executive Director of Landwatch. We reviewed the draft scoping report, and we have a couple of comments. The report is pretty long and complex, and so we appreciate these evening time sort of public sessions, and we encourage you to hold more study sessions because this report, as you know, provides a lot of options for the board to take with the four-door-based reuse plan, and the public needs time to study it, and so does the board. Category 1 items just address typographical errors and minor clarifications, and so we encourage the board to just approve those changes. Category 2 items related to the land use concept map are pretty complex and involve a series of decisions, so we encourage you to, for one, hold public sessions on the Parker Flats East Garrison land swap, because I know there's a lot of questions about that, so it would be useful to hold public hearings on that particular item. And the circulation network maps are also complex and could use study sessions. Category 3 addresses as the Sierra Club pointed out, 153 policies, programs, and mitigation measures that haven't been implemented. And so we really think that no new project should be approved before those 153 policies and programs are implemented. So we really encourage the FORA board to not move forward on any new development proposals until the plan is fully implemented. 2 policies that were excluded in Category 3 and placed in Category 4, we think they were misplaced. One of them is Policy C-3.1 on the estimate of current safe yields within it's for water. Both of these are related to water, so it's Policy C-3.1 and Program C-3.2, which is related to determining the extent of seawater intrusion. We think those should be in Category 3, not in Category 4. Finally, Category 4 addresses updating the base reuse plan. I'm sure the board knows Landwatch is really supportive of a full update of the base reuse plan, especially in light of the new national monument. And that's all my comments I have, and Landwatch plans to submit a letter before the deadline. I believe it's November 7th. So we'll submit these comments in writing before November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, the comment deadline is November 7th if you want the comments included in the final reassessment report. But comments will be accepted after that. Again, I would encourage you to get your comments in by November 7th.
Tom Mancini. I've been sitting back there listening to the wonderful presentation by the chief cook here. But the only thing I saw wrong is you are comparing apples and oranges. You cannot compare a 28,000-acre basic training operation with the city of San Francisco. They're two different worlds with one land use jurisdiction, by the way, city of San Francisco. The buildings up there didn't have to be torn down. They renovated them. You get one barracks out here, $2.5 million. I don't know what the cost is right now there, Mr. Wellner, but I know it's over the $2 to $3 million bracket to rehab one of your buildings. But so if you're going to make a comparison on cooks and menus, then why don't you find a base somewhere, another base in the United States that has basic training, 42 ranges, over 20,000 acres of land, and has a national monument. So I don't mind your comments about the mix. But if you're going to compare apples and oranges, then you find another base with 28,000 acres that had a division and basic training for over 50 to 100 years.
So direct your comments, please, to the content.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, you can't sit here and say you got.
No, you don't get to call out Tom's
2,400
name.
homes on the former Fort Ord that were left by the military. So all I would ask is if Sierra Club's going to make an analysis of different categories, that they find another base similar to Fort Ord and make a comparison about the jobs availability and those which have to be done. If you're going to make it, let's do it fair.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you. I'm Steve Eklund from Salinas, and I've been saying for years that we need to keep Fort Ord as natural as we possibly can. We had just some of the cleanest air in the country around here, and we need to keep it that way. One of the biggest reasons we have the clean air is because of all the vegetation. These trees absorb carbon dioxide, produce oxygen, and we need to keep as many of those as we possibly can. Last time I checked, and it's been a while, there were a couple of thousand houses in foreclosure in Monterey County. So there might be some development. We're going to put some houses in, and that will provide employment for a while, but we don't have any buyers for them. And so after the houses are built and nobody buys them, where's the employment? It's my understanding that the people who want to do the development are from Los Angeles, so they don't really care about the environment. So they get paid for building all this stuff, but they won't have to pay for the it won't cost them anything when nothing is sold, nothing is purchased. There have been all kinds of stuff that have been started that never got finished, that never got used. So at least let's keep Fort Ord as wild as we possibly can for as long as we can. And if then there's a reason and a need to destroy some of the environment, well, let's think about it then. But right now, there is no reason, there's no need to destroy it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Maria Buell. I'm a long-standing and long-time member resident of the city of Monterey, and I'm also a community advocate. I belong, I'm a past president and immediate past director for the League of United Latin American Citizens. As the hat that I was wearing was for the district director. The comments that I would like to share go back to what was the original intent when Fort Ord closed and we were left behind with massive numbers of acres. I believe the community had intended and hopes that what was designated back then needs to be kept because it was a commitment to the community. It was a commitment to me, I believe, as a citizen of this wonderful peninsula, to see not only economic development, to see housing that is desperately needed, to see some kind of vitality to be brought back to this peninsula, because it is something that I believe we can all strive for in terms of trying to leave a legacy for the youth, for the people that are right behind us. I have 4 children, and I can tell you that none of them will be able to ever reside in this community because there are no economic opportunities for them. Housing has gone way sky high. There is no way a house in Monterey, Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong, the average house in Monterey, it's over $400,000. There is no way that we can create the vitality, economic vitality, and the survival that this community needs. It is important that you are looking at this document for what it was intended. Yes, I'm a supporter of the environment, and I believe that that portion that was dedicated to open use for environmental uses such as recreation, that needs to be kept. But on the other hand, you cannot deny this community something that was given to them as a commitment, something that the federal government sought and directed it to become exactly that, the economic vitality of this community. I urge you to maintain those commitments back to the people that we needed, to people like me that hopefully has an opportunity for a housing unit somewhere in this entire vast, immense acreage. I believe we all need to be given equal access and equal voice. So I urge you to please keep that in mind, economic development, equal equitability for each one that lives in this community, but also to look at the true needs of what the peninsula needs. And I thank you so much for your attention to my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yeah, I'm Jane Haynes. I want to say something about the comparison of Fort Ord to the Presidio. Actually, what Sierra Club did is we compared the market study, or what the market study said about what would attract creative type jobs, and to Fort Ord. And what the market study says is exactly the kind of development that's recommended in the base reuse plan. Mixed-use development, where it said that the employers are looking for mixed-use developments. That's East Garrison, that's Dunes, that's Marina Heights. They're looking for proximity to cultural locations, that's CSUMB. And they're looking for dense kinds of developments where people can walk and don't have automobiles and so on and so forth. So if you look at the market study, it's on page 310 and 311. It is a recipe for the kind of creative type jobs that we're recommending. And it's a perfect match. The market study says so too. So we paid over $500,000 for it. We ought to look at it. And that's what it says. So that's the comparison.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Sid Williams. I'm a Marina resident. You all have seen me a lot of times. You know I'm here to talk about the Veterans Cemetery. When I read through the report, I note that this document that we couldn't read there but can here is a very useful document. It very clearly shows all of the different categories that are of importance. There may be some that are left off. But, oh, I'm sorry, sure. But the main thing that I wanted to point out that I think is lacking in this document is the complexity, the blending that has to happen for many of the different projects that may happen, whether that's continued construction at CSUMB, whether or not Monterey Downs ever gets approved, whether it's the cemetery. To show you an example of that, let's take the one I know most about, which is the cemetery. So the cemetery everybody's fighting about where it is, but if it's ever going to be built, it's going to be built where it is scheduled for now. Well, we're trying to sell the endowment parcel because, yes, we need the money to get the state funded, but at the same time, the endowment parcel, if it's changed in any way, then we don't have a developer. So we don't get the money to build that, but the local people will kick in. Mayor Bachhoffner did that for us today. We appreciate that. But there was $1.5 million everybody kicks around. Think, for example, of the road, Parker Flats Road. There's a federal grant to repair that and bring it up to current standards. That'll take care of the veteran cemetery part. But if there's no developer on the other side, who gets to build the rest of that road? That's $4 million more that we don't have. So that's interrelated. The regional transportation network, the East Side Parkway, it gets people from Salinas Valley to the Monterey Peninsula. Lord knows we need more ways to do that. Try and come from Salinas to Monterey at 8:30 in the morning. So we need to worry about that. The people are complaining about gambling. Well, I'm not sure how critical that is. You can certainly gamble all you want right here, right now. There's been a lot of agreements have been made in the past. Those agreements cause one piece of land to be used for environmental purposes, another piece of land to be used for education, and out of all of this 28,000 acres, about 11 or 12% was left for development. So consider what your charter is, and that's to replace the jobs that were lost, and you don't replace those without some economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Jack Stewart. I'm representing the United Veterans Council regarding the Veterans Cemetery. Sid Williams and I have been working on the comments, and basically I would offer up our expertise on the historical synopsis of the cemetery project. I see some mistakes on who started what, when, and how it was accomplished. So I'd like to correct that. I know this is going to be short for you folks because you're generally used to me talking for quite a long time. But I support the economic development and the environment also. But enough is enough. Split the pot up. That's all I've ever asked. And I'm really, really pleased with CSUMB and their progress they've made over the past 10 years especially. I've met some fine young men and women, and they have volunteered to assist us in our golf tournament, by the way. What a nice bunch of citizens we're having. But it's not just the university we're worried about. You're talking about Joe Blow the plumber. There you go. That's all you have to know. People need jobs. Okay? Plain and simple. Some of them are uneducated. Some of them aren't smart enough to be educated. Plain and simple, folks. You have varying degrees of intelligence throughout our society. It's a matter of common sense to realize. That's all. And with that, I'll sit down.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Alfred Diaz-Infante. I'm the president and CEO of CHISPA. We're a local nonprofit affordable housing provider. Have developed over 2,300 units for the past 30 years. I have not had a chance to read the draft reassessment report, but we do plan to provide comments before the November 7th deadline. However, I have had the chance to participate and be involved in land use policies over the last 15 years or so, 5 years as a county planning commissioner, and also about 10 years, actually more than 10 years, involved with the county general plan. So I do have some familiarity with Fort Ord and the history of Fort Ord. And also, I want to thank the FORA board and the county for giving CHISPA an opportunity to develop affordable housing. We currently have an agreement through the county to develop the second phase of the affordable housing in East Garrison, so thank you for that. I'm here because I hope that we will continue to have opportunities for jobs in Fort Ord, and it's kind of personal for me because I have two daughters that are currently in college, and one of them will graduate in about a year, the other one in about 3 years. So I hope that when they do get out, that they do have the opportunity to come back to Monterey County, where I was born and raised, that they too can come back and find a job that pays decent wages. I'm glad to see that the plan provided for 70% of open space. I've really benefited and appreciated riding my mountain bike throughout some of the Fort Ord area. It's something that I really enjoy doing. But I also hope that you continue to provide those opportunities for economic recovery, for jobs, for many of the youth that are currently going to school. So with that, I'll close, and I do plan to provide comments soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Amadeo from the city of Marina. I had actually intended to speak about the Veterans Cemetery. However, after the Sierra Club's presentation, I have other comments. The idea that their recommendations, if they were implemented, would remove the underlying jurisdiction's ability to make decisions about how they recover, I find very disturbing. One of the recommendations, the third, says that there should be a Category 4 that terminates development agreements that are not timely implemented. Development agreements are complicated documents, and they are legal and they are binding. And if you enter into an agreement, but you say, however, it's conditional that you finish this in a set period of time without regard to economic conditions or other natural disasters or other events that could occur, you will have no development. Now, maybe that's the Sierra Club's intent, but it is certainly not the intent of the underlying jurisdictions. They pointed out the Dunes development, which does create a strong jobs-housing ratio. Unfortunately, we are in difficult economic times, and it will require more time for it to be completed. The Marina Heights development project, approved many, many years ago, that property does not belong to the city of Marina anymore. It belongs to the developer. Belongs to the developer. Are we going to use eminent domain? Is the city of Marina going to be required to buy him out, paying for all of the infrastructure that has gone in so far, as well as what the property was originally paid for? I'm sorry, the city of Marina does not have that kind of money. And I don't think there's any city here that has that kind of money. I also do not like the idea of saying only build on blight first, because now you're telling the cities of Monterey and the city of Delray Oaks that they may not develop anything until the university is complete, the city of Marina has completed its projects, and any other infill for the county has also been completed, because Monterey and Delray Oaks do not have blight. They have open space. I think you need to consider that as you go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been together for many meetings. I cannot believe we don't have more speakers. No more speakers this evening?
Oh, God.
For items not on the agenda. All right, Michael, did you want to close with anything else? And then we'll turn it back if we may.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much. Candy, thank you for an excellent presentation and running the question and answer period.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time, and appreciate everybody's comments. And again, just to remind you, there are forms in the back. If you want to put it in writing, give us a form, and then we'll take your comments into consideration during this time frame. And then I also wanted to note for the board that we completed the scoping report. You received it at your last board meeting. We completed that, and you have a CD of the final scoping report available to you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, the public workshop is officially closed. We'll be opening up the... Okay, good point. Any board members have any comments about the public workshop thus far? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank everyone for being here and for making the comments. I also, well, it's just so important to have everybody's viewpoint, and I'm glad that people who weren't able to have their comments in writing by tonight are still considering, including those. I think that's going to be really important. I have a question. It wasn't clear to me in what was laid out about when the board actually gets to give our input. We're told we get to receive the report in November, and we get to go on discussing it, but I'd like to know when it is that we're allowed to make comments. I know we're going to be discussing this at the November board meeting, and I do just want to make sure that this question of the chart showing water allocation, not just water usage, is included in whatever final document we receive. Thank you.
Michael, would you like to answer Jane's questions, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The intention was for the board to actually have some discussion and deliberation tonight, a little bit on the menu. We were hoping you would talk about that, at least give some preliminary input. And again, when the board opens the hearing on the 16th, we would expect again to have some discussion about that and continue to add to the errata sheet. If you have comments, board members, in between, and you see something that's missing, please send it to us and we'll put it on the errata sheet before you get to the board meeting. So there's a number of opportunities to keep adding to it. Again, if we get to the November meeting and you feel like you need more time, we can go to the December meeting, but that's why we've left those two meetings to be able to receive the report. With regard to the water, and you've asked this question a couple times, we have put together an additional piece on the table in the scoping report that adds the allocation. What it doesn't do is it doesn't tell you what's going to each, it tells you what goes to each project in terms of an allocation. It doesn't tell you what the actual use is for each project because we don't have that information, but what we do have is the allocation to each project. So that's been added to the scoping report and is on your new CD.
Thank you. Through the chair. So that's on this CD, and we can look that up. Yeah, I appreciate that. The allocation is going to be important, and since water is such an important issue and it is part of the whole Sierra Club agreement and settlement, we need to be really clear about that. So thank you. I appreciate you adding that.
Well, and thank you for giving us a heads up. You've asked the question a couple times, and we've been digging to get that information, so we finally got it put into the scoping report. And just one for the public, just so you know, the scoping report will be put up, the final scoping report will be put up on the website, I'm hoping tomorrow. Is that right? It's tomorrow, so you can also see exactly what we're talking about with regard to the water allocation.
Any other questions from board members? Yes. Jason.
I have a question. Maybe it's to our council, but it would help me to understand what the legal options are for this board to be able to articulate a vision in terms of the phasing of a future build-out. What the report talks about it being a multi-decadal build-out, and what are the options for us saying, well, in the next decade we would like this, and the further on out we would like additional development to occur. So the basic question is, what legal authority does the FORA board have in order to articulate a vision towards future phasing of the base reuse.
Jerry?
The FORA Act gives the board virtually unlimited planning authority, and it directs the board to adopt a plan that has a number of elements, and you have, I think, very broad authority to set target development rates. You have certain limitations already based on the actions that you've already taken, principally the Sierra Club settlement agreement, the implementation agreements, and the fact that you don't have the ability to control either the private marketplace, which is obvious, or the plans of the local jurisdictions. So long as the plans of the local jurisdictions are consistent with the FORA plan, they have to be okayed. And since they have already been approved, the local jurisdiction plans have already been found to be consistent with the FORA reuse plan, I think it would be difficult to go back and require the jurisdictions to do their plans all over again to be consistent with a wholly new reuse plan. However, I think that within those limits, the board has the ability to establish prospective goals and guidelines. For example, you could say, as you suggested, that you want various horizons of development, various levels of development within certain time horizons. I think you could do that. I think you would have to make those, to the extent that that is a substantial departure from the reuse plan that was given to the jurisdictions for them to meet on a consistency basis. I think you'd have to make these goals prospective so that when jurisdictions want to redo their plans in a substantially different way and they resubmit to FORA for new consistency determinations, they'd have to meet the new goals that you want to set. That is a shot from the hip. I mean, I would really feel more comfortable if I had an opportunity to get a clearer idea of your question and a better opportunity to read the FORA Act and the Master Resolution and the other documents that would guide a response. But that's the best off-the-cuff, unresearched, and really undeliberated and unconsidered response that I can give you. I'm not disowning that answer. I'm just saying I think I could do better if I were given more time.
Jason, does that unresearched answer meet your needs?
That was quite helpful. I wasn't actually expecting an answer tonight. I think that was a great preliminary one, but I'm more putting the question on the table, and because I think it's one that I would like to understand the answer to in the coming months as we're continuing through this process.
Jerry will research that further, I'm sure. Okay, any other questions by board members?
I'd be happy to research that if it's the board's pleasure. I can only, as counsel to the board, I can only take direction from the board as a whole. Now, I'm not asking for a motion to direct me. I get a sense of the board, but I'm just saying that I cannot take direction from individual members of the board, but rather only from the board as a whole. And I'm going to infer from this comment that the board as a whole wants me to do that, wants me to do the research into that question. Unless I hear otherwise, I'm going to take this as direction from the board.
Anybody disagree on the board? Jason, you're supported. Any other questions by board members? Felix?
More a comment, really, than a question. First of all, thank you all for participating in this reassessment report planning process. I really appreciate that. tonight has been particularly interesting because the tone is becoming a little bit clearer to me. And I wanted to make my comments in the context of being probably the first person in the city of Seaside of any political interest that actually supported a regional approach to base reuse. Back in the early 1990s when this approach was considered, I stood pretty much alone in Seaside saying that I thought a regional approach was a good one, to not good political effect for myself. The received wisdom in Seaside at the time was that we had to resist tremendously a regional approach, and that Seaside and the other underlying land use jurisdictions should basically go it on their own. 20 years later, the received wisdom is now that FORA is a very good thing. But what I hear tonight and through part of this reassessment process is that the pendulum seems to be swinging a little bit to a side that I think the city of Seaside and hopefully the other underlying land use jurisdictions would be concerned with. And so I want to thank Nancy Amadeo for making possibly the single clearest set of comments that I've ever heard in my 2 years on the FORA board. I don't agree 100% with what Nancy said, but she very clearly lays out the dangers of a more regional approach rather than a balanced approach. So thank you, Nancy, for putting that into the record. I still stand very firmly on the side of a balanced approach. I believe that we need to take into consideration the concerns of the region and the impacts that development at the former Fort Ord has on the region. But at the same time, we need to make sure that the land use jurisdictions retain sovereignty. And if that is a direction that we're potentially going against, you have my promise that I, as a representative from the city of Seaside, will vigorously fight that and ask my colleagues on the board to do so as well. FORA, as I see it, is an entity that has sought a balanced approach. It's sort of a checks and balances sort of situation, and it's worked quite well. We shouldn't use the reassessment process to derail that. So that's something that I want to state here very clearly for the record tonight. And I have heard some comments that seem indicative of trying to go in a different direction. So I hope those comments are clear enough, and I can expound on those in the future. But the checks and balances approach that we've had in the decade and a half that FORA has been in existence is good. I don't think we should jettison that, and I think that the reassessment process should be reflective of that. We had a very lengthy meeting in the city of Seaside today with our subcommittee that is advising the council on a letter that is to be drafted and sent to FORA in this reassessment planning process. And we'll be hearing that on Thursday night's meeting. So if you'd like to weigh in on that and hear what we're thinking, please come to the city of Seaside at our 3 o'clock meeting. It actually won't be heard until at least 4 o'clock because we have a closed session. But I'd certainly be interested in hearing the other land use jurisdictions' thoughts on this, because I think there's maybe something afoot here in terms of changing the approach. Also, the other thing that I'd like to say is I'm a big fan of the Sierra Club, have frequently been involved in events that you put on, support the general concept of the Sierra Club. But something that you said in the record tonight does concern me a little bit, and maybe I've just misunderstood it, so I'll look forward to speaking with you in the future on this. But insofar as your comments were delivered on economic development, you focused very heavily on creative endeavors. And while I certainly don't think that's a bad idea, it almost sounds like you're promoting a mono-economy. Hopefully I've misunderstood, and if I haven't, though, that's something that I think you need to very clearly reassess, because mono-economies are a bad thing and not sustainable by definition. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Felix. Any other questions or comments by directors? Seeing none, again, the public workshop's closed.
Sorry,
Jason, one?
There was an interesting back and forth with the Sierra Club's presentation pointing to the Presidio and then others observing that maybe that's not the best comparison. And it would help me to have a better sense of what other base reuses have done in terms of the urban non-urban split and maybe if there's examples that we could more closely align with to see where we may want to be going, and maybe more broadly, there's often this talk about how much of former Fort Ord is set aside for open space. To understand for other areas that we might hold out as good examples of land use planning, what that split typically is, the urban-rural split, because I think that would help provide context that would inform me and may inform my colleagues as well.
Michael, respond.
Yes, Mayor Burnett's question is one that we have had some help with in the past. I think Ron Cheshire provided all of the board members with a specific link to a report that was prepared a few years ago for Northern California military bases that looked at the jobs, the environmental conservation, the housing opportunities of military bases in Northern California. And city manager from Seaside Marina, Delray Oaks, along with myself as executive officer, participated in a statewide coalition of folks that deal with military base reuse programs. And we have a pretty good idea of what other people do. There's also the Association of Defense Communities that held its annual conference here in Monterey that assembles what they call the SBRR, the Status of Base Reuse Report, periodically. They are updating that currently, which has a lot of information along the lines of what you're seeking, Mayor Burnett, and I think in response I could provide to the board members a summary of what those documents offer, and give you either links to get your own access to those documents, or provide it on the FORA website where you could get access to it. But all of those, the kind of things you're talking about, what other people do, how they address the question of urban, rural / open space balance, as well as the connection of how they create jobs and whether they do single vision economic reuse or multiple vision or phased approaches. I think we might have enough to satisfy your question.
That'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'll ask Michael, could he add in there whether or how many of them may have had some type of settlement agreement with the Sierra Club or any land use group like that? Just add that to your research.
I can think of immediately 5 or 6 in Northern California where there was litigation with respect to Alameda Naval Air Station. There was one with the actions that included McClellan Air Force Base in the county of Sacramento, but I'll put those together as well.
Okay, last call for director questions, comments. Going once, going twice, gone. Okay. The public workshop is closed. We'll be going into public comment period. I don't know if everybody else is like me, but after the cooking analogy of our Sierra Club presentation, I'm getting hungry, you know. And our executive director, being one with a lot of foresight, really wanted to issue everybody sleeping bags and pillows here. We figured we'd be here past midnight. And one of the rules is if you have meetings past midnight, you have a chance to camp out here at the Carpenter's Hall. I told him we'd get it done a lot quicker than that. So we'll be entering public comment period. Any member of the public would like to address the board on any issue not on the agenda. In other words, any issue not relating to the reassessment report may do so now. You've got 3 minutes. Thus far, we've been very, very good about keeping it within 3 minutes. We're all very busy. Please try and be succinct. And one other thought, too, of course, everybody has a First Amendment right to say what you want to when you go to the board here, but we're not looking for quantity of information. If 50 people get up there and say the moon is made of green cheese, it really doesn't change the fact or the logic behind it. We're looking at logical comments, things that can be presented before the board that can sway public opinion or the board's opinion when we come back in January to make final decisions of prioritization and what we want to address. So that being said, first public comment. Thank you.
Levon Stone, Fort Ord Environmental Justice. I would just like to clarify something. It seems as though our local communities people that was involved in this base closure, that the direction everything is going is who's able to obtain attorneys and put forth lawsuits, that those are the people that will be in the driving seats in our communities. And since the folks who are not middle class anymore, because of the fact they lost their jobs here at Fort Ord, that they are in the lower class that is not being looked at. The university, CSUMB, is not looking at these people. The Sierra Club is not looking at us. So who is looking at us? Where are our representatives? And I would like to say that as the Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network, that we would like to make a presentation on behalf of our community. And we don't have an attorney. We can only speak to the fact that as a member of the Restoration Advisory Board that I was 20 years ago, that we talked about how we were going to use this process, the BRAC process, base, reuse, and closure process, the circular, and all these rules and regulations that govern Superfund. I would like to do a presentation and bring this stuff forward that seems to be being kicked in the background right now as far as what is happening to people in the local community. I don't understand what all this conversation is about, and is not including the people who live here. And everybody, it seems to be on this uphill thing about bringing all these smart folks in, like there's a lot of dumb folk walking around in our communities just because they don't have access to these high-powered jobs that everybody is talking about. I would like to get that clarified, and I would like for these power people here to be able to talk to us, talk to the Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network, talk to our community, stop leaving us out of your conversations and your processes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please. Are there any other speakers? Heart be still. No other speakers for public comment period. Ladies and gentlemen, the public comment period is closed. We now next on the agenda, items from board members. Any board member have any items they'd like to bring up at this time?
You're really worried we're going to fill the time with our own conversations.
Yes, of course. Any members? Any board members? Boy, this is very surprising. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you for showing up. We appreciate all your comments. They will be considered.